Dance Your Heart on Fire podcast, episode number 98. As dedicated dancers, we all share a common goal to level up our dancing over time. This goal inspires us to take weekly classes, invest in private lessons, and attend workshops and festivals. And to make sure we don't forget what we learned and we can go back and practice, we record tons and tons of videos. How many videos do you have saved on your phone right now? How often have you reviewed them and extracted the golden nuggets that you learned from those classes? How often do you record yourself during a solo practice session or with a partner? If these questions are making you feel seen right now, I have the solution for you to organize your dance journey. The Dancer's Training Journal 1.0, a Notion template to help you organize your dance videos and more. Notion is a cool and easy to use productivity app, and I've created a template for you that does the heavy lifting for you to have a system in place to organize all of your videos from your practices, private lessons, festivals, and more. To learn more about how to untap your dance potential with focus, accountability, and consistency with this dope resource, go to neokizomba.com/templates. Again, neokizomba.com/templates.
Welcome to the Dance Your Heart on Fire podcast, the podcast dedicated to inspiring dancers worldwide whose hearts have been touched by music and dance. The universal language of dance and music is spoken by many of us throughout the world. We want to motivate the dancer in you by sharing stories, insights, and ideas to enhance your journey. Join us now with your host, Charles Ogar.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. We are here with a good friend of mine, and I think this is going to be podcast number 98 or 99. We're getting close to 100 episodes with our podcast. So thank you guys for listening and making this happen. It's been awesome to continue on this journey, and COVID has been kind of like the opportunity for me to stay home and be put in one place to even do these podcasts consistently. And I've been doing some videos, so that's been really, really fun. So thank you guys for tuning in for another episode. I'm excited to have the talented Kiri Chapman on the line with us. How are you doing?
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm doing great. It's about 8 o'clock here in Sao Paulo. I'm just finishing up some rehearsals that I was doing by myself, and super happy to be here with you guys.
Thanks so much for joining us, Kiri. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day. So it's the beginning of 2021 now. And 2020 was a little bit crazy. So let's start off with how 2020 went for you.
2020 was a ride, let me tell you. So about a month before the pandemic hit and shut everything down, we had opened a brand new school right here in Sao Paulo. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with me and my work. I dance a lot with my husband, Jaime Aroxa. Before that, I was dancing a lot with Marc Brewer. I danced with bachata team Gerardo Morales in Mexico. And I also do some touring and teaching and performing on my own. But I had been doing a lot of touring for about 3-4 years, and I was really looking to put some roots down. So we finally found that we got this great opportunity, this great space in Sao Paulo. Our associates here are super wonderful people, fantastic artists. So it was just everything was coming together. We got our apartment and everything. We opened up the school. We had 80 students in the first month. Great start, beautiful inauguration. Things were going great, and all of a sudden, boom, COVID hits. We start hearing, there's a virus from China. And at first it was very strange, Nobody really knew what was going on. And then it started shutting down, and we were like, whoa, this is serious. And let me tell you, the first couple weeks that everything was shut down, I told Jaime, my husband, I was like, you know what? I don't want to get out of bed. I'm hoping this is just a bad dream, we had put everything into this new space, and here we are, and everything shuts down. And partner dance, what we do, it's very hard to, adapt that to an online platform, because part of the draw for most people is that sense of community, that sense of seeing people, touching people, being face to face. Something really special. So it was a tough adaptation at first, but like with any sort of difficulty, there's always a silver lining. So about after 2 weeks of just being super depressed, I just got up and I was like, you know what? Let me go back to my roots. And I just started doing ballet class. And every day since the pandemic starts, I've done ballet class on Instagram and Facebook. So I put it up to share with other people, and a lot of people started joining, people from all over the world, all ages, all backgrounds. My mom, who's never danced ballet in her life, she started this year. So if a 70-year-old woman can do it, anybody can. I've had people, who haven't had any dance experience, who started taking ballet with me. And ballet is something that you can do on your own. It's more of like a practice that's really, you can do it anywhere you want by yourself.
For sure.
Very helpful for partner dance. It's helpful for understanding all of the other dances, right? You hear that a lot. Ballet is a great foundation. It's a great basis for a lot of other dances because it's based on verbs. It's not based on forms. So to bend, to stretch, these are all actions that can be used in any of the dances. That's why you hear the term, even in kizomba, plie,
Mm-hmm.
You hear a lot of dancers using ballet terms because they're so universal. So there have been people from all over the spectrum, from non-dancers to, I had Karel Flores in my class today, just brilliant salsa dancer. I hope you guys know who she is.
They should know who she is.
Yeah, really, it's been amazing. And the community, we created a really lovely community. So actually this Sunday, if anybody's interested, I don't know if this will be released in time, but January 10th, my dancers are throwing a little party online to help me with my marketing, which I still have not gotten down. They're like, Kiri, how come you don't do any marketing? I'm like, I don't know, it's very difficult. I just barely know how to do a couple hashtags here and there. But it's really great to have people like yourself who are not only dancers, but also have knowledge and education about how to spread the word. So we're not just dancers, we're also educators, right? We can reach people that aren't just in our immediate circles. Anyways, the community that we've created through this ballet group has been fantastic. So the silver linings have been, definitely worth it. It's been an incredible journey. My husband and I have had time to practice on our own. So sometimes when you're on tour all the time, like you said at the beginning, you were like, this is the first time I've been able to be consistent about some of these projects I want to do. Same thing here. So I'm starting to do more videos, starting to do more just rehearsals on our own. We've been focusing a lot on our own training. So sometimes when you're out on the road, you're focused on a lot of the education of others, but actually, I was missing taking classes myself, rehearsing myself. So it's been quite a gift. And then just appreciating the people in my life a little bit more. So I talk to my family much more. I'm just, when everything's taken away from you, you finally realize what has value. And I think it's been a really big learning experience for us all. Not to say that any of this has been easy, but as with any challenge, I think, our real character, as Helen Keller says, character is not built when you're just chilling. I believe
that's true.
I believe she said that exactly. Helen Keller was not just chilling. She faced a lot of challenges, and that's why she became such a resilient and incredible, evolved human being. And I think that's what this pandemic is forcing us to all do, is take a look, really deep look about what's important to us, where we want to invest our time. I've been cooking a lot. I've had a chance to I have some plants. I don't know if I know this is just where you can see I've got 3 plants. I've never had plants before. So that's That's been fun. So I think 2020 for me was just setting some roots down, finding my online community, connecting with people that I want to connect with, and working on projects in a more consistent way, because consistency is that discipline of every day doing the same thing is so much more, it evolves so much quicker than just doing one thing here, one thing there. It kind of gives you a cohesive path, which has been really nice for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 2020 has been crazy for, the world. So obviously it's going to affect the dance scene. And yeah, you really have to kind of just roll with the punches. And if things are taken away from you, you have to kind of find out the things that you are grateful for, So,
Totally.
there's plenty of books and stories about people that have gone through wars and the Holocaust and all kinds of crazy situations. And like you said, the character is what gets a chance to get developed, And yeah, I think it's important for dancers to be able to adapt and be online. And it's interesting because I think before, like learning online was kind of like not so popular, and it's like, no, if you want to train, then you need to fly to Argentina and train with the dancers there, or go to Brazil.
Yeah.
And now, like, that's not the option anymore. So now all the dance instructors or most of them are trying to live online.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the marketing part of it is really important. And even through like my dance journey, like I've worn a lot of hats. Like I've been the artist, I've been the organizer, and teaching in all kinds of different ways, like from like private lessons, 1-on-1, to small group classes, to weekly classes that are local, to big festivals. So like that changes the way that you deliver your information and everything. But that's one of the things that I really like about this podcast, because it's rare that we get a chance to kind of sit down and just like have a cup of coffee. And the events are amazing. The events are awesome. Like nothing to take away from those things. But like if you're not there at that event, then in that geographic region, then it's hard to kind of capture, But like this podcast will be worldwide. So now we're seeing like the geographic barriers
break down,
kind of erase away. So now anybody who wants to learn that has internet connection is able to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's pretty awesome. And it's not something to replace, like one is better than the other, but definitely having both, I feel, enriches it,
Yeah.
And if you take a look at other industries, like just taking like, I use this analogy a lot on this podcast, but the fitness industry, there's apps, there's YouTube channels, there's Tybo, there's P90X, there's all these programs that people can buy. You can go to the gym and get a personal trainer. You can go to a local Zumba class. Like there's so many options available. So I think in the dance scene, the more information we put out there, then the more people are going to have a chance to consume,
Totally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're even doing like Zoom parties and things. It's just a matter of like intention. I definitely miss, dancing with different people and being in those spaces. But like you said, we're reaching people who really, if you want to, you can. It's no longer, based on your geographic region. And the funny thing is I've been teaching some groups in Michigan. Some of my friends that I went to university with, they have schools in Michigan. So they called me up when the pandemic hit and they were like, hey, Kiri, can you teach our ballet class? Because we'd love to have you, because I've taught some workshops there. And we'd love to have you continue to teach them on a regular basis. So for the first time, I was teaching these girls that I taught workshops to on a regular basis. And we had such a great time that even after when Michigan opened back up again, they were like, no, we don't want to go. We don't want anybody else. We just want to take class with Kiri. So they brought me into the studio on a big screen. And even though they were present in class in the studios wearing masks and everything, they used both. So they had me come in they put a big screen.
That's awesome.
And I'll keep teaching them even long after this pandemic is over. So I've made some connections that even once this is over, even once everything opens up again, we've developed such a strong connection and such a great way of working that we'll continue on afterwards in different degrees, using these different platforms, these different technologies to really close that distance gap and make sure that everybody has access to the education that they want.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And one thing that you mentioned earlier that I thought was pretty awesome is that the draw for a lot of people to partner dancing is the connection and the touch and the community. And I did a video recently about the love languages and Kizomba, but definitely applicable to Zouk as well.
Yeah.
And the most popular love languages are physical touch and quality time, because you get that one-on-one connection with the people. And that's the hard part with the pandemic is the lack of that, So now it's like, how do you adapt? How do you cope until things start to open up again,
Yeah. So I've been teaching because all of our classes got canceled and we still have a bunch of students here, they were just starting with us. We kept most of our regular classes going every night online, but a lot of those people didn't have partners in their homes or in their quarantine pods, so they were by themselves. So we had to teach. We've been teaching. The classes are Monday is Zouk, Tuesday is fundamentals, Wednesday is dança de salão, so bolero, samba, forró, and bachata. And we have been keeping them going. I tell my husband, we're like Scheherazade. We're like telling stories to save our lives, Very, how do you keep somebody's attention online for partner dance that doesn't have a partner, And so what we did was we developed different exercises and different ways of teaching people to find a partner within themselves and within the music. So a lot of people, when they come into partner dancing, even without realizing it, they're not connected to their own bodies. So if you don't connect to yourself, you'll never be able to connect with somebody else. Like you hear that all the time. It's very cliche. You can't love yourself. You can't love anybody else. If you don't connect with yourself, you can't, connect with anybody else. If you don't have patience with yourself, you won't have patience with anybody else. But it really is a reflection. I believe that our external relationships with other people are really just a mirror of our relationships to ourselves. How we treat others is how we treat ourselves, and vice versa. So our students have really been focusing on their body consciousness, on their coordination, on how they connect to themselves, and then how they connect to the music. And I think that when we come back, when our students come back to the socials, they're going to dance totally differently. I think they're going to really find in themselves perhaps what they were looking for in other people. And once you have it in yourself, nobody can take that away from you, right? No pandemic is going to take that internal joy away. You can turn on your music and dance as you like, which I do all the time. I mean, we're singing and dancing in this apartment to our neighbors' chagrin, so that they just love us. But yeah, I mean, you gotta do it for yourself, and then you'll have something to share with other people. And I think that's something that our students are really starting to understand, and that's something we're super happy about and pleased with.
Yeah, the mental space that's needed in order to dance is something like you can't really realize until you get to a certain level in the mountain and then see like what more there is. I have this concept called the Connection Trifecta. And basically it's like connection with yourself, connection with your partner, and connection with the music. And obviously when you're in a dance class, you only have an hour. There's only so much information that you can give before you overwhelm your students. And people are there to socialize, to connect, and all that kind of stuff. So there's not so much focus on the self because you're interacting with another person. So it's easy to get kind of sucked into that scope of things. But when you are forced to take a look at yourself, you do realize a lot of things that you weren't paying attention to before. And it increases that awareness. So you have to build your self-awareness emotionally and also physically, like through movement and things like that. You have to increase your awareness with your partner and like reading energy and the moves and vocabulary and understanding the lead and follow dynamic. And then the music is a whole nother world of like, what is the music speaking to you? The highs, the lows, is it sharp? Is it flat? Is it sad? What are the different layers going on in the music? How are you going to interpret those? And then whether you're a leader or a follower, as a leader, you're kind of like more forward thinking, like, okay, I know this is coming up in the music, so I'm going to start this move and I should end on this move to hit that sound. And for a follower, her mind is more retroactive because she doesn't know what the future is coming. So she has to do something. And then she realizes, oh, that was a triple turn with a crossbody lead into a hammer lock or something like that. But the leader thought about it before and the follower realized it afterwards. So it's awesome. And I mean, that's the draw for partner dancing because you get to really challenge yourself across so many different facets of awareness.
Totally. And we've been doing some exercises with our students as well, where your partner is just the music, because what a partner music can be, I mean, we have actually one of our students came from Canada. He's hanging out over there right now. I don't know if you can hear us, but we've had, hey, Svi, we're on a podcast, Svi. Anyways, he came from Canada. We had an event that this would be our second year doing it, where we bring a small group of people from all over the world to one of Jaime's schools in Iguaba. And we bring about 20 to 25 participants. And then we bring 20 to 25 of our own dancers that are somewhere on their journey to become teachers. So generally in Jaime's methodology in his schools, it takes at least 5 years to become a teacher. Like the person that's done it the fastest, I think did it in 5 or 6 years. Some people, they never get there. Some people, it takes them, 10, 15 years. But you go through a process of first you're a bolsista, a scholarship student, then you are a monitor, and all the time you're taking a lot of classes, you're helping a lot of students. You might start getting some private classes once you're a monitor or an assistente, and then eventually you become professor, teacher. But along that process, we select some of the most talented and hungry young dancers, and we bring them to this retreat, which is a week long, and it's in this small town by the lake, by the ocean, and we take them and put them into this hotel. We get the whole hotel, and for 1 week, we got 50 dancers doing laboratories every evening, 6 to 8 hours of dancing per day, and everybody's dancing with one another. So you get to dance with Brazilian dancers that have been trained in these dances with Jaime's methodology from anywhere between 3 and 15 years of training. So it's really nice to be able to dance together with those people, and our dancers, it's a great opportunity for them as well to meet people from other places. A week of classes with their mestre, which is Jaime, and just like really fun experiences. We take them out on a boat trip, and it's super fun. We had a great time last year. Anyways, we had a group of people signed up, ready to go, like super excited, and of course, we canceled everything. So some of our people who had signed up for it were like, you know what, we're coming anyways. So we brought them in. We couldn't have big groups, but one at a time, like with all the protocols and everything. They're just staying with us here. So this is our third student to come through the pandemic, and it's been amazing because we get to give them personal attention for a week of immersion. So we dance a couple hours a day, just focusing on what they need to focus on, whether it's body consciousness, musicality, stepping, like working on, there's dead zones in your body, right? Some people just are very used to posture like this, so whatever it is that they need to work on, we can zero in on them, and it's been super successful. The students that have come so far have completely transformed in their dancing, and through that, their confidence and their outlook. I mean, one of the students has not left. He's going to be moving to Rio. So it was good for him. He liked it. Anyways, that's just to say that, another little silver lining is our friends we're making friends
on a more intimate level.
Yeah. In a way that we wouldn't do before. But we do. I really do hope that we get to do that event again. It's called Muda Sua Cabeça pelos Pés, which means change your head with your feet. It's kind of like, Tony Robbins, like power poses and things like that. We knew a long time ago about that stuff. If you change the way your posture, if you change the way you stand on the floor, if you change the way you stand, if you hold your head up high, you smile, it changes things inside of you. It changes the physiology, your hormones, your endorphins, all of these things change inside of you. So if you can change the way that you stand, you can change really your approach to the world around you and how people see you. So that's the idea, is using dance not to just get to a certain aesthetic, technical level, but to use dance as a tool for self-development, for self-discovery, for evolution, for just a better, healthier, fuller life.
Mm-hmm. The nerdy side of my brain is trying to contain itself because I like nerding out on concepts and ideas and consciousness and methodology and pedagogy in dance. It's not very common, and it seems to be so much more of a thing in the Brazilian Zouk world. And that's what's even kind of sparked my curiosity to be at the Canada Zouk Congress. We talked about that before we did the podcast, and why I started doing the Jack and Jills as well, to kind of get immersed more into that world. And I know Jaime Aroxa is kind of like the OG Mac Daddy of the Brazilian Zouk world. So my mind also wants to delve into that world, but this is your podcast. I want to talk a little bit about your.
Fascinating. I mean,
for sure.
Yeah,
I think we should dedicate a podcast to methodology, because that's like
I'll be a translator. I'll put my translating hat on, and we'll get Jaime on the podcast. We're about to travel. We have a small group teachers course in person in Iguaba coming up next week. But after that, I would love to introduce him to some of your audience. He's a fascinating person. He's got stories for days. And he's got a very interesting methodology. When I first met him at the Dutch Zouk Congress, I was there performing and teaching with Marc, and he was running the teacher's course. He'd been invited to kind of be a part of the teacher's course. And when he got there, everybody else just kind of cleared out, just like, who is this guy that everybody's calling Mestre? Because we had never heard of him. Not a lot of people outside of Brazil had heard of him, because he had stayed in Brazil for so long. I mean, he's got a franchise of schools here. He works a lot for Carnival. So he had his whole life here in Brazil, and he hadn't really gotten into the Congress scene. So I was like, why is Renata Peçanha calling this guy Mestre? Who is this guy? And he started talking, and it was just like, I knew immediately that he was a genius. You can just tell when you're just like, I don't know who this guy is, but I went to all of his classes, and I've had the good fortune to study with some of the greatest teachers, in ballet, in jazz, in contemporary. Since I was 12, I went to a boarding school in Washington, D.C., one of the most prestigious ballet boarding schools, called the Kiri Academy of Ballet. And all of our teachers were former stars in Kirov or theater. I went to the American Ballet Theater. I was a training scholar there. So every summer I would go to American Ballet Theater in New York and get training with some of the best, not only dancers, but teachers, like real geniuses in terms of passing on what they knew. Because it's one thing to understand. We say there's content, understanding, knowledge, and wisdom. So content is what you pass. The content, the pliés, the tendus, the basic 1, basic 2, The understanding or knowledge is what do you know about that? What do you know about the weight transfer in basic 1? What do you know about the organization of the body in a plié? What do you know about the history of the tendu? And the wisdom is, how can you pass that on in a really concise and easy and understandable way? I don't use a lot of kinesiology terms. I don't even use a lot of ballet terms. I tell my students that there's official and an unofficial history of ballet. The official history is that King Louis XIV was, made Versailles super famous and fancy, and he wanted to decorate his court with beautiful dancers. So he brought in an Italian dance master, because the Italians were really big at the time in dance, virtuosic ballet, commedia dell'arte. But I tell my students that's the official story. The unofficial story is he called for this famous dance master, and on the way, the dance master stopped at an inn, and some homeless dude got him wasted, took his documents and took his place, sent him off in the wrong direction. So this homeless guy, this kind of beggar, shows up at Versailles. He doesn't have the education that the Italian dance master has. He doesn't speak French. He doesn't speak Latin. He just speaks colloquial Italian. So he finds a French dictionary and it just has basic verbs. So all he can do in his dance class is be like, plie. And then the dancers bend because plie means to pleat. And he says, tendu. And they start to stretch. And people don't know this. They think ballet is very prim and proper. But at the time, ballet was super scandalous because they were wearing these skirts and then stretching their ankles outside their skirts. So how do you pass it in a way that's funny so that people don't get intimidated? It's very easy to get intimidated by classical ballet. So how do you pass it in a way that's funny? How do you make them laugh? And how do you make them put them at ease so that they can accept these technical concepts that you're trying to pass? So the methodology and how my teaching has changed since working with Jaime, of course, using all of my 30 years of ballet training and all of the great dance masters that I've crossed paths with, that have helped me, great choreographers that I've gotten to work with, but also melding that, fusing that with Jaime's incredibly easy, interesting, and genuine methodology.
That's awesome. Yeah, it'll be a dream to have him on the podcast to share some of that knowledge, because with myself, I'm considered like one of the OGs for Kizomba, at least here in North America. And you remember when we first started out and you were with Marc and we were figuring things out, but there isn't a lot of strong methodology. There isn't a lot of strong methodology when it comes to kids, So a lot of it is just figuring things out, And one thing that I've appreciated with Brazilian Zouk, and kind of a side note, is that I've had Larissa on the podcast, William.
I saw Paloma. You had Paloma on the podcast.
Paloma, that's who's the name I was thinking of, and Guy, and some other people as well. And it's really interesting to hear the dedication to the dance in general, like that they go through, and like the steps and the years of dedication. Like that's really rare to come across in the partner dance world. And I guess, I don't know, it's just like when somebody is a professor coming from Brazil, it's a different thing than me self-proclaiming myself as a professor in the States. And everybody has their own journey, like they're doing the best that they can and things like that. But it's really awesome to see this dedication to the transformation of the knowledge. And even in Brazilian Zouk, one thing that I've really admired is like this homage to the instructor that taught you all the way up. Like people know, okay, well, I learned from Kadu learned from this person, and then they like all the way up the tree to learn that.
Learn from Alex Carvalho learned from Jaime. There's whole lines go back to Jaime. You can almost, the only line that doesn't go back to him is the lambada. So Braz dos Santos, Gil Damascus, these guys who danced from Porto Seguro, and then they danced a lot with the big singers of the time. So Kaoma, Berto Barbosa. Yeah. So, but most of the dancers that you see now, and I think a lot of that mentality of studying, of being in it for years before you actually say that you're a teacher, comes from Jaime schools. Because like I said, the quickest way to get to be a teacher, the people that have done it the fastest, maybe it will take them 5 years. And that's a daily practice. You go into the studio for hours and you take classes for hours, and you take the teacher's course is a week long for 8 hours a day. And then you have laboratory after that. So it's something that's taken very seriously, because they had these kind of icons of the dance to look up to. He had a company that the standard was super high. And and I think, of course, that's not just Jaime. There have been other big leaders in dance that have brought Brazilian dance to where it is now. But if you look at most of the Zouk dancers now, they can trace their lineage back to Jaime schools.
Yeah, and it's just awesome to see that line and acknowledgement exists in a partner dance, And I just find that really fascinating. I've been putting out videos recently because I'm just like starting my YouTube channel, but my last YouTube video was 24 minutes long, and it talked about what do the origins of the most popular partner dances have in the world? And obviously, like wherever you go in the world where these partner dances are come from, like the hubs are these hotspots, which were hubs for the Atlantic slave trade. Yeah. So with the exception of Angola, because that's in Africa, but they were still the Portuguese it was a Portuguese colony for 400 years. There are Cubans there. Argentina, tango, Brazil, Brazilian zouk, Colombia, you have cumbia, Dominican Republic, you have bachata, Haiti, you have compa, Cuba, Puerto Rico is salsa. Even in the States, you have swing, but it's all of this African European kind of fusion of cultures that gave birth to the partner dances that we have now. And so it's crazy if you were to look at the partner dance world in just one sphere and realize how many people are connecting and sharing happiness, even though it was birthed from like something really, really tragic that happened, you know? And it's important to know that history, you know, and these things like really just kind of drive my curiosity. But I would love to like learn more pieces of the puzzle on the Brazilian side of things with lambada and things like that. And another interesting parallel that you might be able to speak to is I feel that Brazilian zouk, in the video, I talked about how there's like kind of two spheres of partner dancing. One is like the studio world with the congresses and the festivals and the dance studios and things like that. And the other side is like this cultural street side. And I feel like Brazilian zouk does a really good job, at least from my limited perspective, of balancing both. It's not strictly like tango where it's like really far-fetched, you know, unless you maybe go to Argentina. But this culture of like the community in Brazilian zouk is a little bit different, but they still have the standards of like training in the studio and things of that nature. Yeah. And since you're in Brazil, I'm pretty sure you kind of get a taste of both. Yeah.
I mean, so I think it comes down to like this kind of struggle between respecting tradition and carrying it forward. So like if you look at music, like zouk music, it's getting really, really modern. Like if you go to a lot of zouk congresses, you'll hear a lot of very modern music. And I sometimes
top 40 remixes.
Yeah, I feel a little bit sad that some of the older music, and I guess this is not just a trend in zouk, this is a trend in the world, you know, like
bachata, kizomba as well.
Yeah, and not even going beyond that, of the thousands of years of music that we have. I mean, you couldn't listen to all the music that was made in the world in 10,000 lifetimes. There's so much. And I feel like most of the music that's being played on the radio that, you know, that has a lot of kind of public attention is this very tiny sliver of the latest music. But even like 20 years ago, that's already old. You know what I'm saying? Like, let alone 50 years ago. Like in the last century, there's been so much amazing music from so many different traditions, you know, like folk, bluegrass, swing, blues, rock and roll, classical, you know, Latin, folkloric, that then got fused with jazz, and then you get these great salsa bands. And so I just feel like in general, I feel like we could, zouk does, you know, it does the best it can, and it's caught up in this global current of like modern. But I feel like if we could appreciate a little bit more the traditions and the music that came before our current time, I feel like we could be a much richer community. Tango actually does a great job of, and maybe that's like on the other side, right? Although a lot of new tango music is really fantastic. There's a lot of great, you know, tango orchestras or tango sexteto, milonguero, a lot of these guys that I love that are modern, but the sound is very traditional. Then there was a whole neo tango movement that it's not as strong anymore, but there was a lot of, you know, interesting fusion going on there, but they never left the tradition. They never threw away the old sounds. Like you go to a milonga sometimes and you hear the cracking of the records because they keep those, like, they like that. And I find that so beautiful, in a way. We need to grow, but always respecting the roots of where we came from. I think ballet does a good job of that. Maybe too much. I would like to see a little bit more. I'd like to see a little bit more growth in the classical ballet scene. There are some great choreographers, Yuri Killian, George Balanchine, but even that was a while ago. Now there's some Ohad Naharin, Crystal Pite that take the ballet tradition and take it somewhere else. But there's not a lot of classical. What I mean by classical ballet, I mean like on point, using really the ballet syllabus that have modern take on it. Like I haven't seen any of the classical ballets, like Swan Lakes, Sleeping Beauty. Royal Ballet did that all male Swan Lake, which was beautiful. I don't know if you saw.
I didn't see that one. A
sliver of it at the end of Billy Elliot. But there have been some interesting ones. But I wish there were more. I wish like the big ones would push the envelope a little bit more in terms of what kind of stories are being told and how they're being told. But every community has its own time and its own path.
For sure. I think that's why it's really fascinating to use the technology that we have now to do podcasts and do videos and do documentaries and like Jaime's knowledge, like spreading that knowledge. So like you mentioned the crackling of the music from before, like that was written. I don't know how old these tango songs are, but like we could do the same thing with the knowledge that we have now to kind of like at least create some kind of digital form of it so it can get passed down, because sometimes a person is curious about the past, but they don't know where to go to find it, or it's not documented somewhere, or you have to go to the country to find these things, So it's very interesting to be able to like have this forward vision and look in the future, but then also not lose sight of what's in the past and get stretched in both directions, It was interesting to hear you talk about the music because as I'm growing up in the US, I grew up with a lot of R&B and hip hop. And so in Kizomba, we have a lot of remixes of these songs, like Lauryn Hill, Drew Hill, Brian McKnight, but people will hear maybe the cover of the original song, So this is only going back maybe 20 years, but like, hey, did you know that this is a cover? Some kids don't even know what Destiny's Child is, So it's like. And so it's interesting. It's like, okay, well, this is the group that Beyonce was a part of before she was Beyonce, but it's not even Beyonce singing. It's like a cover of the song, So I actually created like this catalog on my website that shows, hey, here's the remix, here's the cover song, and then here's the original song that came out maybe 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. And that's even a small amount of time if we're talking about hundreds of years ago, So it's very interesting to balance everything and explore, so much information.
Here's a funny anecdote. The very famous Zouk song of Kaoma? La na 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 na. I think Shakira did a remix, or like Ricky Martin, I don't know. But that song was originally, I think it's a Bolivian folk song. It's a bullet on YouTube and hear the original, and it's a folkloric song of the Bolivian people. And then Kaoma, which was it was a French producer who took talent from Brazil and made this band. But it's not a black and white sort of situation. It's like a little bit of this or that, and nobody invented anything, right? Nobody really invented it's always like a mix. It's always the mixes that are interesting. I just ran across a piece of music the other day that I danced to when I was in the Tulsa Ballet. There was a beautiful ballet called Lambarena, and I found it on YouTube, and it's a CD called Bach to Africa, like Bach.
The composer.
So it's a mix, and I think that's why Latin music is so fantastic, because it's a mix of a lot of the melodies that the European music kind of focused a lot on melodies, and then mixed with these African rhythms that are just they're almost like addictive. Like once you they just get into that. You feel them. You really feel the vibration. So when you mix those two together, you get this Latin feel that you know Brazil has, that a lot of the Caribbean has, that you know, and that created a lot of Latin beautiful partner dance and the Latin aesthetic. But yeah, everything's just kind of a recycle,
a remix of a remix of a remix of a remix. You know, it's crazy. That was kind of the premise of the whole video that I did, and why I was like nerding out on it, because like people will say, "Oh no, you don't know the true tango, or you don't know the true kizomba." But when you start to do your research, it's really not black and white at all.
No.
They are samba songs that have salsa in them, because you know Fidel Castro sent troops to aid a particular group in Angola when they were winning their independence in 1975, and mixing that with their European influence from Portugal for 400 years. So you have African influence, Portuguese influence, Cuban influence, and then take Caribbean Zouk, which is African people that were taken from Africa to the Caribbean. They created a new art form. That art form makes it back to the motherland and influences the traditional dance of another country that gives birth to a new art form geographically in Africa. And I'm pretty sure like different composers and singers coming out with different songs at the time help mold that as well. But it's really fascinating to like.
All it takes is one person, and as the pandemic, as Corona has taught us, just takes one person to spread it, you know? So maybe one dancer came, I know in Zouk, a lot of the movements can be traced to one dancer or another. So there was a Lambada dancer who started, who got together, who was dating a ballet dancer. I think his name was Rebecca. You know, Jaime's told me some of these stories, but a great Lambada dancer was dating this woman, and they started dancing together. She fell in love with Zouk. She stayed in Porto Seguro, and because she had this beautiful cambray, she started using they started doing a lot of cambrays, a lot of head. So because she looked so beautiful doing it, it started becoming more of a style. So you can say the same thing about Anna Pavlova. You see most of the ballet dancers these days with very arched feet, but before that, so arched. Anna Pavlova, they said, oh, well, she's got like kind of weak feet, or Maya Placenta with her really long arms. Then that became the trend, right? It just takes one person to do something with confidence, start setting a trend, and you're like, you know what? I think that looks cool. It's like one guy didn't have anything to eat, and he was like, just had some old milk, and it got real stale, and it became cheese, and then he didn't have anything to eat, so he ate it, and then everybody else was like, you know what, that looks cool. But it started with one person, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't like there was some movement like that happened very academically.
Yeah, like a bunch of people got together and like formed.
No, it was like some random person that didn't have any other option was like, you know what, we're going to try this out. And it worked, and then people started following suit.
And it's crazy because this all happened without social media. Nowadays, dancers can post videos all at the same time from all across the world, and we can watch things and get inspired from all kinds of different genres. But before, like, somebody had to travel and share these ideas and share what they saw, and records were like physical. You couldn't just put it on the internet and stream it worldwide. You had to like record them, make them, ship them to different places. And it's
a movie about that musician. Gosh, I can't even remember what it was. There was a musician. I feel like he was from Detroit. He was a musician. He made like one record, but somehow one of his records got to like South Africa. I think it was South Africa. And anyways, he became super famous in South Africa. He had no idea that he was so famous, and that some of his music was used in the resistance of apartheid, and like it became a political anthem. And this guy was some American guy. I think he was in Detroit, and there was a movie made about him. And then finally he went to visit the country, and I believe it was South Africa, and there were like stadiums of people like waiting for him to perform, and he had no idea. I think he was working as like a clerk. He had like, career, and he had no idea that an entire country was, everybody in the country knew it. It became a political anthem.
A movement.
And now I'm forgetting the movie, but it's interesting how one person could take a record overseas and without knowing it, this movement
Exactly.
just takes a little seed.
Mm-hmm. So fascinating to kind of delve into all of this history.
Yeah.
Very, very fascinating. I'm curious, you were mentioning before a little bit about your background and how you got to train extensively. I wasn't aware of all of your training background because I met you when you were dancing with Marc, and I knew, okay, this is a ballet dancer, but can you tell us more about how you started dancing and where you were born and things like that?
I was born in Sacramento, California, and I had a neighbor who I just thought was the most beautiful woman in the world. She was a few years older than me, so I just idolized her, and she took ballet. So she was my first teacher. She would, like hang out with me on the street and play with me and show me what she was dancing, and I just fell in love with it. So I would just copy her, and she was my first inspiration. And then from there, my parents put me into a creative movement class, and then I just kept dancing, and I loved it. And then my parents moved to Michigan. I didn't find the same. I had a great teacher in Davis, California, where we lived, and I didn't find the same teacher that I loved. I did find her at the very end, so I found a wonderful teacher. But it was like 45. It was like a 45-minute drive for my mom, so she would drive like an hour and a half, and it was like getting to be like 3-4 times a week. That's a lot. I wanted to do more, and I did a competition, and I got a scholarship to the Kiri Academy of Ballet. So I just begged my parents, like, let me go. And they let me. So it's a boarding school, and I left when I was just turned 13. So from 13 to 17, I trained, did my academics. Yep.
I just wanted to ask, were your parents also from Sacramento as far as like your nationality or heritage?
Yeah, my mom was born in Japan. She was born in Tokyo, but she grew up in Kamakura. Then she moved to California to go to school when she was about 18. And then she met my dad, and she decided to stay. My dad is just like California kid, like regular white guy, engineer, doesn't make much. But neither of them dance very much. But I guess somehow along the way, I really got into it.
Nice.
And then when I got into the Kiri Academy of Ballet, then it's like full time. You're training like 6-7 hours a day. You live there in the same building with 80 other dancers from all over the world. So the school's super small, and I got to dance with some of my colleagues are now principal dancer with San Francisco Ballet, American Ballet Theater, Norway, very, very high level dancers. So I got.
And this is on the ballet side of things.
That's on, classical ballet.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you like make your income when you're studying and dancing with that much intensity week in and week out?
Yeah. So I was super lucky to get a scholarship for my education, but I also, I would like work in the kitchen on the weekends, and because we still had to pay for laundry detergent and little things that you need because you're on your own. You have a dorm and they feed you and everything. But everything else, you really have to get on your own. So I worked in the kitchens, and then when I was 17, I graduated and I went straight to work at the Tulsa Ballet, and I worked there for 3 years. And beautiful company, beautiful repertoire. But I was super young, and I got really burned out because I was a great student, but there's a big difference between being a student and being an artist. And we're actually doing an online class. Jaime and I are doing an online class starting on the 16th, January 16th, called Awakening the Artist, because some people are very good technicians. Some people are very good students. Some people are good at repeating and putting that into your body finding a movement vocabulary and getting comfortable with it, which is very important. And that is definitely the first step, right? Getting that content, getting comfortable with all that different content. But then you become a professional. And if you want to become a professional, you got to become an artist. You got to have something to say. You've got to start owning your uniqueness. And that was super hard for me at 17, especially for somebody who had left home so young and it was very kind of like, you had your blinders on. It was like, we didn't do anything. We just did ballet, you know? You didn't have a lot of like, you know, relationships. You weren't allowed to have any kind of like romantic relationships. You didn't do much academics. I mean, we did our academics, but it wasn't that important. You know, nobody took their SAT. Nobody applied for college. Go get into a ballet company. So, when I got there, I didn't really know how to be an artist, and all of a sudden I was in, you know, this company with most people were much older than me. I didn't go to a studio company. I didn't go through an apprenticeship. I went straight to the Corps de Ballet, and it was super hard for me. So I struggled quite a bit. And after 3 years, I couldn't take it anymore. I talked to my director, and he was like, "Just finish out this last rep, and we'll let you out of your contract." And so I did that, and that's when I just started to kind of discover who I was outside of ballet. And yeah.
So how long from that point did you get into partner dancing?
It was about, I'm going to say maybe 3 years after that. I think I started doing maybe 2 or 3 years after that. Me too. I'm so bad with dates. I can kind of chronologically what happened. So I left Tulsa Ballet, and then I went home for a few months. I kind of just tried to put myself together because it was very kind of an identity crisis. You know, like if you define,
I can imagine,
as a ballet dancer since you're 4 years old. You know, I was one of those very precocious kids that was like, I'm going to be a ballet dancer. I'm going to be a professional ballerina. And I got there, and I was like, wait, this is not what I thought it was going to be when I was 4 years old, because your imagination when you're 4 is very different from the reality sometimes. So I was trying to just kind of figure out what I was going to do. And I thought, okay, well, I had saved some money from being in the company. I'm going to just travel. I'm going to give myself time to travel around and see what's out there. I'd always wanted to connect more with my Japanese roots and visit my mom's family and, speak Japanese and, you know, study Japanese. So I did that. And then I met a lot of people along the way, and one thing led to another. And before I knew it, I was in New York, just seeing what other dancing opportunities I could encounter, because I'm 20 years old and I have like no real skills besides very specialized. I remember like trying to get a job, because that's the first thing that I tried to do when I left the ballet company. And I remember like walking around Ann Arbor, which is where my parents were living, and just like trying to get a job, and people just didn't understand. They were like, so you're 20 years old, you have a high school degree from this like very obscure academy in Washington, D.C., and you've been in a ballet company. Like they didn't get it. So I like found, you know, I got a job at a little cafe, like not even a Starbucks, like not even Starbucks. They're like, I don't know, very suspicious. So like I got a job at a little cafe, and it was just like very, very rude awakening, because, you know, I had this like angry middle-aged woman just like breathing down my neck, like, don't you dare leave that cashier's, you know, like your job is to be locked to this register. And I was just very like naive, because I'd been in a boarding school all my life. Like we used to joke, like it was literally like a pandemic for 5 years of your life. You know, you had to sign out. We couldn't go out we couldn't go out of the building without a chaperone until we were 15. So like you're in the building all day long. You don't even really have time to do much other stuff. But like, just to give you an idea of how sheltered we were, the school had a short bus, like a small little short bus. And sometimes like maybe once a month, they would take us to like a shopping center. Like we needed to get detergent or like toothpaste or things like that, like just basic necessities. And so they would take us to Target, and we would get dressed up. Like we would full makeup, like full, like, like it looked like a bunch of like, little artists getting off this short bus.
Mm-hmm.
What people thought was going on, but yeah, it was like quite a party on that short bus.
Mm-hmm.
Target, it was like your outing of the month, right? So it was a very rude awakening to like be pushed into the real world and not have many marketable skills to make money out of dance. So I was like, let me go to New York. Let me see what's I did some small like off-Broadway musicals, and then I met a friend that I had danced with before who had opened a studio in Astoria, Queens. She was like, you got to learn salsa because I want you to teach the basic classes. So she taught me the basics of salsa and bachata, and I started teaching the basic classes. We had a small company. We would perform in different venues, and I just loved her. I loved the girl I worked with. So that's how I started in partner dance.
Nice. And so New York is definitely the place to learn salsa because there's so many festivals and congresses and instructors and performance teams and all that kind of stuff. So how involved did you get into that world?
Not too much, to be honest. Because I was in Astoria, Queens, and we were really focusing on just Astoria and most of like the big congresses. I remember we did go to one of the congresses, but I had like no idea. I think we went to the New York Salsa Congress, and I remember seeing like Eddie Torres, and I remember seeing Grisel Ponce.
Ponce, yeah.
And just being like amazed. But I don't even think we like bought a ticket. I think we just kind of like snuck in because we didn't know. It was like my best friend Carla, and we didn't know what was going on, but she was just like, so, she was just full of it. She could just talk her way into anything. So I just hung on behind her, and she just kind of took me around. It's really real, sort of like real salsa. It's not like I went into class at Yamule. I didn't even know what Yamule was. I was just trying to do our little company and just doing very, very basic sort of salsa and bachata. Cumbia was my first dance. I loved cumbia. Because it was easy, it's just easy.
Exactly. For sure. So I don't know how much time period happened until you started, I guess you were earning money through working with your friend by teaching these classes?
Yeah. We had group classes, we had private classes, we did like, parties, things like that. We did we used to choreograph a lot for quinceañeras, which was a blast.
That's a huge thing.
Hispanic population in Queens. So they would throw these parties, and they were super fun. And
definitely.
Today, I still get messages from some of the girls because it was a huge stepping stone in their lives, from a child to a woman, and I think I wish that we had more of those like initiation rituals, because it used to be so important. I feel like those are the traditions, those are the roots that sometimes maybe our society leaves behind, but how do you transform from a child to an adult? I guess the Jewish tradition still has the bat mitzvah and, the Latin, especially Mexican culture, quinceañera, but the half Japanese, half white kids did not even a party, so I was brought up into the adult world very abruptly. Get back.
I don't think we have anything in the African American world either, but that's interesting. So I might be jumping a few years here, but how long was it until you met Marc?
I met Marc. He says that we met at a salsa club and that he said, oh, we should do something together. And then he sent me a message on Facebook and I never replied because at that time I didn't use Facebook. I didn't really, I don't know. I didn't use Facebook that much. And now it's a great, like I use it all the time. I see it every day. I'm like, totally. I got my 2 Facebook accounts. I'm like full on Facebook. At the time I just didn't. And then I ran into him years later when my parents were taking ballroom classes at the studio where he was teaching. And he saw me rehearse with one of my parents' teachers' students who wanted to do a showcase. So they asked me if I would do a cabaret showcase. And he saw me rehearse and asked me if I wanted to do some cabaret stuff with him. And that's how we started. We actually started in ballroom, show dancing, cabaret, theater arts. And then he started showing me about Zouk. I was like, oh yeah, I already know bachata. And he was like, oh really? Do you? And I was like, yeah. I didn't.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, you guys were like competing in the salsa circuit Congress world. Yeah. So from meeting Marc, doing the ballroom cabaret to like, how long did it happen until you guys were like performing for Latin festivals and things like that?
Yeah, I feel like my first Latin festival was Austin Latin Dance Festival. I think it only happened a couple times. It was run by
Troy. I was there.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. We met like way at the very beginning.
What'd you say?
I didn't even know congresses existed. Like I didn't know.
Oh wow!
Is this, you know?
And, I remember Troy brought Marc Brewer, and you guys did a show there.
We did our cabaret show actually, which had nothing to do with Latin dance, but it was a cool show. So they're like, yeah. And then I think it was probably a couple years later, I want to say, that, and I was in school at the time. I went to the University of Michigan because I was like, I don't think I want to work at that coffee shop anymore. Just in case dance doesn't work out, let me try to get a degree. So I was going to school at that time, and about that time, I was working with Marc throughout that time. But it was hard to travel because I was
to juggle.
Yeah, so it must have been a couple of years after that when I had finished school. There was a year that I actually didn't finish school. I got a contract to work with a jazz company, beautiful jazz company in Chicago called River North Dance Chicago. And it was really just an incredible opportunity. And so my professors were like, you know what, go do this and then you can finish your classes later. And I was like, all right. So I went to school late, so what's taking another year off? And I'm really glad that I did. It was a great experience. But then after that, the company actually closed down. They went bankrupt. So I only stayed half a season, really. Then during that time when the company closed, I went back to Michigan, and I had this time before I would start classes, before I would finish my classes. And Marc was like, hey, let's compete. So I was like, all right, let's do it. And we just went like full on into training and choreography and traveling. And we went to, that small preliminary competition in Chicago. And we won the trip to Puerto Rico for the World Salsa Open. So we did that. We competed at the World Salsa Open in Bachata Cabaret and Salsa Cabaret. And we just started making kind of a little name for ourselves through the competition circuit. And then from there, we started to travel more to congresses and teaching and things like that. That's where things started taking off for me in terms of traveling and into the Congress. And it was fun.
I was going to ask how much Zouk was a part of that while you're doing cabaret and salsa and bachata. I know Marc also did Zouk. I know he's one of the few artists that was dabbling in so many styles at the same time at that particular time period.
Yeah, I always loved Zouk, but it wasn't the most financially rewarding investment. So it was something that we kind of enjoyed on our own, but the community was super small in most places. Like Michigan really didn't have much of a Zouk community, and it wasn't the best. It wasn't like it was more of a strategic decision. It wasn't an artistic decision. I think it was more of a strategic decision. There weren't many Zouk competitions. It's not like you could win a Zouk competition and then start to travel. Whereas in salsa and bachata, you win a couple of big competitions and people start knowing.
And you start traveling and getting booked.
Yeah. So I think that was more of a strategic decision on Marc's part. I was just kind of like, just do what you want. I'll do all the dance. Just tell me what to do. But he was he knew more about the business than I did. And I think that was more of a strategic decision.
No, that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot more money in the salsa bachata world to throw these festivals and these congresses and things like that. And if you're trying to make money as a full-time as a dancer, you go where the pool of money is, so
right.
That makes a lot of sense.
It wasn't even like the money. It was almost like a profession. Like of course, that means kind of one and the same. Like to make a profession out of something means that it's giving you your livelihood. But there wasn't really Zouk profession when we were starting. There wasn't. We didn't find a niche for ourselves in a way in Zouk at that time. Now, of course, it's changed, and I love Zouk, but I love all of the dances. It's like you ask her, who's your favorite child? It's like, she's never going to tell you. I mean, yeah. One that she likes, but she's not really going to admit it.
Yeah, for sure. So what was next in your chapter of dance after competing and traveling? And I know you guys did that for a few years.
Yeah. So we did that for a couple of years, and Marc was always doing some projects on his own, and I was kind of doing some projects on my own. He was doing more projects than me, but I know that when I started doing some projects on my own, he had already been doing a lot, especially in Europe and Eastern Europe and throughout the United States, touring a lot on his own. It's hard to bring two people out. It's much easier to bring one person out.
Thanks.
So I was like, all right, well, maybe I should try to do some stuff on my own. And when I had gone to the Dutch Zouk Congress, Jaime had said at the end, after he saw one of my shows, or one of our shows, he saw our Kizomba show, actually. He really liked it. And he came up to me afterwards and was like, I'd like to invite you to Brazil to work with me. And I was like, yeah, I would love
This is Jaime.
Yeah. And I remember going up to Sarah Lopez and I was like, Sarah, Jaime Aroxa just asked me to work with him. What do you think? Like, I love his work, but do you think he's like sketchy? Like, do you think I should go? She was like, let me check it out. And she's such a doll. She was like, she went and danced with him, and then she asked him to walk her back to the hotel, because in Dutch the hotels are quite long. And apparently he was quite a gentleman. And the next day she was like, yeah, he's cool. He's good people. Go. And I was like, oh, let's do it. So, he is good people. He ended up being slightly suspicious because obviously I'm here. We got married, That's suspicious enough. Thanks a lot, Sarah Lopez. And no, she's a sweetheart. But and ever since then, I think one of the great things about working with Jaime is that he's always encouraged me to do work on my own, to start developing projects and students and classes and performances on my own. He was the first one to choreograph a solo for me. And I was scared to perform. And he was like, you're going to perform. You got to do it. You got to face your fears. You got to be independent. You can't depend on anyone. As a woman in this business, you can't depend on anyone. And I was like, all right, facts. It's true. It's really cool. So I started kind of developing my own brand alongside his. And it's been really, really amazing.
So one question that I've had on my mind since the beginning of the podcast is, when did you learn Portuguese? Because I've seen you in several settings and some videos translate for Jaime. And I'm like, wait a minute, when did she start speaking Portuguese? And you're translating it so well. So like almost poetically. So
thank you. I mean, I've always loved languages. I studied Russian in school because all of our teachers were Russian. I studied Spanish because of salsa and bachata. I think it's really important to learn the language, especially if you're listening to music and, the music has so much poetry in it. And so to be able to understand it and to be able to sing it and to be able to speak it, there's certain words that, especially in Portuguese, that have very specific meanings, So and language really shapes how you think and how you communicate and how you express yourself. One of the big tenets of Jaime's methodology is developing your voice. So he always encourages his students to speak, whether it's making sounds or, singing or humming, just using your mouth, using your voice, your vocals. And I think that's something that's missing in the ballet training. I think that's why a lot of ballet dancers are a little bit because they're never encouraged to use their voice. And so when I came to Brazil, I already spoke a little bit of Spanish. I was like one of those annoying that's like always trying to speak Spanish, but I loved it. I think it was, I think it's such a wonderful skill to have, is to speak a different language. And I think I started just faking Portuguese. I was just fake speaking Portuguese, and they would laugh so hard. They were just speaking Spanish and then trying to put a accent on it. And I was like, yes, I am.
I think
bad Spanish, and then it's just pretending that she's speaking Portuguese. And that's what I did at the very beginning, because I felt like, a lot of people do speak English here, but not enough. Jaime doesn't speak English. Most of the conversations you hear on a daily basis are not in English. So you just have to you just listen to it all the time. And eventually you fake it until you make it. And then one day it started coming out more Portuguese than Spanish. And and I've always had an understanding of what Jaime wanted to say. So even when I didn't understand totally what he was saying, I understood what he was trying to say. You know what I mean?
So one interesting thing about the languages is I speak Spanish and I'm learning French now. And it definitely opens up so many doors to communicate with people and to understand the culture. And there's some things that just can't get translated when you hear things, And so that's also been hearing Portuguese. And I think one thing that's really important to learn a language is not being afraid to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And I think so many people don't progress because they don't make mistakes. But if you don't make mistakes, then you're not going to learn, And you're going to kill somebody if you mispronounce a word in the language.
I love being an underdog. I love it. It's the best place to be. If people think you're something big, then you have what a big pressure, Mm-hmm. I just say it right off the bat. I still joke with people. I mean, I understand pretty much everything. I'm pretty fluent in Portuguese, but I still say to people all the time, I don't know what I'm talking about. Because it just takes the pressure off of me. So I just like to live like that. Just constantly being underestimated is the best place to be.
How good is your Spanish?
How good is my Spanish? Well, in that same sort of vein, it's pretty bad. It's better than my Japanese, but it's not that great. Now they say when I go to Mexico, because it's so similar, they say they're like, you're just speaking Portuguese. We can't understand you anymore, because it's so similar that it's hard to differentiate. So instead of I go to the store, eu vou para o supermercado. So I'll say that, voy, I'll say voy.
Mm-hmm.
Different enough, they understand what I'm saying, but they make fun of me because they say I'm Portuguese. I'm speaking Portuguese now. That you're not Mexican anymore,
That's how I am with my French right now. French is challenging to pronounce compared to Portuguese and Spanish, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
To backtrack a little bit on your story, you were at an event, you met Jaime, and he invited you to Brazil. And how did that process go? Because you went from, hey, he invited you to Brazil, now we're working together and traveling everywhere. But I'm pretty sure, what was your intention?
Yeah. Pretty quickly. It's a funny story. So the Dutch Zoo Congress is a week long. So I had been going to his classes all week, and every class that I took with him, I just kind of I was like, this is incredible. I found who I want to study with, and I hadn't found many people in the Latin dance world that I felt could really teach well, They really teach. It wasn't that I didn't want to learn steps. I didn't want to even learn concepts. I wanted to to understand and be able to create and really be fluent in dance. I didn't want to learn, a poem here or there. I wanted to be fluent in that language, So I was, really, really, I've always loved to study. I think, education is the most important thing that you can invest in. So when he asked me to work with him, and when I kind of got the feeling that it was a safe, I wasn't going to get killed or, assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
All right, worth it. I'm gonna invest in this. And so I came at that time. Marc and I had we went to the Acapulco Salsa Congress, which was an incredible salsa congress. I love. We had worked a lot in Mexico. We had a really strong relationship with a lot of the Mexican artists, which was incredible, really, really wonderful. And then he was going to Europe for a month. So I was like, all right, I got a month to work on whatever I want to work on. So I was like, I bought my ticket from Mexico. I almost didn't get to go because you had to have a visa at the time. Now you don't need a tourist visa. But I couldn't apply for my visa because Marc and I were traveling so much internationally, and I needed to give my passport to the Chicago passport agency for 2 weeks. I didn't have those 2 weeks before I was going to leave for Brazil. And I remember I went into in Mexico City on my own, just into a coffee shop and just be like, can somebody help me with this? I need to get my pictures taken. And I remember this dude at the counter was like, yeah, he closed his shop and we took me all around Mexico City and finally got all my papers together. And thank God I got my tour. They put a rush on it. And when I came back from the Acapulco Salsa Congress, I picked up my passport and I flew to Brazil. Jaime picked me up at the airport and, we went straight to his school. Then we had a performance that night on a raked stage, an improvised performance on a raked stage. I almost died. And
wow.
those inclined, old, stages. And then I just we worked together. I was there for almost a month. Then I loved working with him. We started developing a really close relationship. And then I had plans. I was like, well, the next free time I have off is a couple months from now. So I came back. We met in Argentina because when he saw me dance, he was like, why don't you dance tango? Why don't you dance Argentine? Because he's a very good Argentine tango dancer. He's been a judge at campeonatos. He's the only Brazilian to judge at the World Championships in Argentina, Buenos Aires.
Oh, wow.
And some of his couples that he trains are 8th in the world in escenario. They're super, super good dancers. So he's invested a lot of his education and time in teaching tango. And he was like, you need to learn tango. I was like, I mean, I've done a little bit. And he was like, no, you need to really invest. So we met in Buenos Aires. He finished Carnival and we met in Buenos Aires and we spent a few days just him opening up my eyes to tango culture. And then, along the way, you start getting closer. And then before you know it, you're kind of addicted to one another. And 4 years later, we're still together.
Wow. That's crazy. That's quite a story to tell people. Yeah.
No, right? Sometimes I don't believe it myself. If you would have told me when 10, 15 years ago, where I would be today, I'd be like, that's not going to happen. But that's life, right?
Mm-hmm. So how is life in Brazil? We talked about it a little bit earlier, especially experiencing modern day Brazil, but then also having Jaime to kind of help you understand the dance scene and tell you stories and things like that. That's a rare perspective that people don't get a chance to hear from. Yeah.
Yeah. Brazil is a crazy place. It's really full of everything, beautiful nature, beautiful people, crazy politics, but I guess that's everywhere these days. It's definitely got some things that I had to get used to. I grew up in a very secure sort of you could walk around in the evenings, no problem. I never felt unsafe, and I don't feel unsafe here, but you kind of have to learn how to look over your shoulder. You can't just be walking around with your cell phone, credit card out, especially me with this little Japanese face of mine is walking out, So, yeah, you just have to learn to be a little bit more savvy about where you are and who you're with. And I've gotten to travel a lot around Brazil because, Jaime gets invited to a lot of different festivals, different roles. He works on, before the pandemic, he worked on a really big TV show here, Dancing Brazil, Dancing with the Stars. So that was super fun. Always getting to meet different people, going to the filming, going to the studios. His work with Carnival is fascinating. Samba, the artists that he knows, it's kind of like you get to meet people that you've heard about, but you didn't know that they existed. And then you see, it's kind of like, have you seen that movie Big Fish? When the kid, his dad tells him all these crazy stories and he never believes his dad. And then he actually goes to those places and sees that it's really the way that it was. Because some of the stories are so extraordinary that you're just kind of like, yeah, I feel like he's exaggerating. But then you actually meet the person and you're like, wow, you go to the place, you see the footage, or and you go to the Cidade de Samba, like the samba schools in Rio, and everything is like just giant size, and you go in like these. I remember we went to, he was choreographing Comissão de Frente for Paraíso, like one of the samba schools, and he had to go meet the presidente, like the president of the samba school. And I just remember like walking into this huge Cidade de Samba where they build those huge floats, like those giant structures, and there's like building going on, and everything is just larger than life. And we went up to the office, the president's office, and it's just like super air conditioned. Like he looks like a total like mafia, just like straight up gangster, and he's just like covered in bull, looks like a bulldog, and he's like, how's the choreography? And I was like, oh my God. Yeah. It's just like it's an adventure.
Yeah, it sounds like a great adventure. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, this podcast has been super, super awesome, and really, really awesome to just like spend the first hour not even talking about your dance history and just really talking about history of dance. And I could talk about this kind of stuff.
This. I hope I can give you much more than just my experience. But anytime, give me a call. We'll chat some more. We'll bring Jaime the next time, and we'll tell some more stories.
For sure. That'll be awesome. And I'm going to go into a section of the podcast now where we just ask you some personal questions so people get to know you as a human being and not so much as the dancer. And so my first question is, what is a quirk about you that not a lot of people know about?
There's a quirk about me that not a lot of people know. I feel like most people know most things about me. I'm pretty open. Hey, Steve, what's a quirk about me? Yeah. Like I'm kind of quirky. I'm just all around kind of quirky. I feel like there's not one particular. I really like cooking. I like really weird Japanese food. Like probably, but one of my favorites is like this slimy Japanese fermented beans called natto that smells like stinky socks.
Interesting. That's quirky.
Not many people can deal with it, but I love it.
You're really good at giving painful massages.
Oh, I'm really good at giving painful massages. Yeah. It's a very important part of anybody's daily routine is like, my Jaime is like my portable Pilates machine because he massages, but it would only go one way. Like I would give him massages, but then when it was my turn, it was like he was always too tired. And I'm like, this is not a really beneficial situation. So I developed a way of like stretching while massages. Well, I'll do my stretches, but just happen to be on top of him. So it's a mutually beneficial. Now it's a mutually beneficial situation.
Nice. All right. Next question. What app do you use on your phone the most outside of social media, music, and messaging?
Maybe my photos. I love going through my photos. I just go through.
You have there's a stereotype of the Asian woman or girls that are always taking photos of everything. Yeah.
No, well, it's not that I take so many photos. I actually should take more photos, but I love going through them. So like, especially when you're on like a plane or like somewhere where you don't have internet, you have to go through and erase everything. But as you erase, you like remember things. And I think and I'm kind of like, I don't like to erase them. So I guess I'm kind of like a photo hoarder. I love going through photos.
I gotcha. Awesome. All right. Next question. What is your favorite animated movie?
Oh, Spirited Away.
That's an old school one.
Spirited Away is brilliant. I mean, I'm Japanese, so of course it's gonna be one of those, Princess Mononoke, all of those. Like, who's the director? Or Studio Ghibli or Totoro. Totoro is maybe one of my favorites. I love Totoro. You know, that giant.
Exactly.
So adorable. Yeah, definitely Totoro then.
Nice. That's awesome. Okay. We just have to finish the podcast with 2 more things. The first thing is going to be to allow people or giving them information on how to reach you. So social media and things like that. And if you have anything you want to promote or let people know what you have upcoming on your calendar, you can let them know. And then the last thing would be like an inspirational quote or something like that to end the podcast with.
Okay, so my Instagram is Kiri Chapman and my Facebook too. Best way to keep in touch with me is Instagram, and if you send me a message, I'll always respond. I have a daily ballet class that I think is great for everyone. It's at 2:00 São Paulo time, which is noon Eastern Standard Time, and I think there in Texas it's 11 a.m. It's Monday through Friday. Saturday we meet on Zoom, and Sunday we're having a stretch class for stretching and conditioning for those dancers. But it's a daily practice, and I feel like it's so important because if you take something daily, if you do it for 2 weeks, it's the equivalent of taking a year's worth of weekly classes. Something special about 24 hours. Like, God made the day in 24 hours because after 24 hours, you start to lose a little bit. But if you get the inertia of doing something daily on a daily basis, it can just really be very transformative. And I think that's what dance is about, is transforming, not just learning steps and things like that, but really integrating that transformation into your body and hopefully your mind and spirit. But I would recommend people to take that. And it's all free. It's contribution based. So some people don't pay anything. Some people are super generous. It's education should be accessible for everyone. So I'm trying to make that accessible for everyone.
That's awesome.
And then the new class that we're starting, which I would also highly recommend with Jaime and myself, I'm doing a lot of the translating and a lot of like the organization of the content, but it mostly comes from Jaime's methodology. And it's going to be on Saturdays and Sundays starting on January 16th. It's a 3-month course that you can take. Each module is 1 month long. So 1 hour on Saturday, 1 hour on Sunday. And it's all about awakening your artists. So not just the technical aspect, it is understanding your unique qualities and developing the confidence to start creating and presenting and expressing. So I would recommend that to anybody, not just dancers, but whatever. We're all artists. We are all artists, whether you define yourself as an artist or not. Every one of us has artistic capacities, and every one of us has a unique artistic voice. And it's just that some of us haven't been encouraged in that way and don't identify with that. When you identify with that, you become an extraordinary human being, not just a normal person.
Mm-hmm. And if they want to sign up for that, how do they do that? Is there a Facebook event or something?
There isn't. So it's going to be a small group. So you have to send me a message on my Instagram or my Facebook. Just send me a message and I will respond with all of the information on WhatsApp. I usually make a WhatsApp group for these Zoom classes. But yeah, if you're interested in that, please send me. There's some information on my Instagram page. I'll make another post about it. I'm not good about like being consistent about the marketing stuff, but you can always reach out to me. I always answer all of my direct messages. So if you're interested in that course, you can direct message me on Instagram or Facebook. My email, chapmankiri@gmail.com. Those are pretty much the basic ways you can reach me.
Okay, awesome. And what do you feel is inspiring your dance spirit at the moment to share with our listeners?
So one thing, the first thing that comes to mind, I think I said it earlier, was that dance should be easy, interesting, and true. So in Portuguese, it's fácil, interessante e verdadeiro. So you wanna have that. Some things are just one. Some people you meet are very interesting, but they're not genuine, right? Sometimes you meet somebody that it's really easy to get along with them, and they're genuine, but they're not interesting. So you got to have all three, and when you have all three, that's when, magic happens. So if you can find a way to train and dance and move in a way that's easy, not easy like you just have to lay there and it's going to happen, but easy in a way that you're not going against the grain. You're going with nature. You're not going against physics, the laws of physics. You're going toward them. You're using them. So in a way that's going with the flow. And interesting doesn't have to be. You don't have to be beautiful. You don't have to be talented. You don't have to be, any particular way. But you want to be interesting, right? Beauty fades, but you only get more interesting with time. And then true, if it's not based in some sort of truth, whether it's your truth or natural laws of the universe or kind of a truth that grounds you, it's not going to be lasting. So I always look for those three things in everything that I do, from relationships to dancing to music to teaching, all of that. Easy, interesting, and true.
That's awesome. That's a good quote.
Thanks.
All right, Kiri, thank you so much for joining me today. It was awesome to listen to you and learn more. And yeah, it's interesting to, I don't know, I guess I'll end on this particular note because I turned 36 last month. And like I mentioned before, like I've been around the kids scene for a long time, but like dance is like a lifelong thing, So like I've been partner dancing, like in general since I was 20, but just like the professional side of things has just been since 2014, and it's 2020 now, so 6 years. But when I hear stories of people like yourself that have dedicated like years and decades to the dance, it's interesting to like see how far you've come, but then also realize like how much more there is around the corner. And it's hard to lose sight of that sometimes, and to kind of keep seeking inspiration and curiosity and things like that. So it was awesome to hear you share your story, and that was really motivating for me as well. And I'm really looking forward to our next conversation. Thank you for checking out the Dance Your Heart on Fire podcast today. Be sure to check out neokizomba.com for links to everything that we chatted about today, as well as some awesome free resources to enhance your Kizomba journey.